Skira stood in front of the small glass building, her arms crossed, her golden armor catching the warm light of the twin moons. She glanced at the human male waiting inside the one called Ethan. He looked strange to her, with his soft skin. No battle tattoos and no visible weapons. Still, there was something about him that caught her attention earlier that day. He had walked up to her at the outpost, offering a gentle smile and a simple question. "Want to grab something to eat?" He had asked. She had raised an eyebrow, confused at first, but then realized it was a courtship invitation on Xenthara, her homeworld. Only a male with courage would invite a female to share food. It was a symbol of power, of offering, of desire. Now, she stepped inside the human diner, the doors sliding open with a soft hiss. It smelled strange, inside like grease, spice, and something sweet. Ethan stood up from the booth and waved her over. He wore no armor, just a dark jacket and simple boots. "Hey, glad you came," he said, smiling warmly. Skira sat down stiffly, scanning the room. No guards, no servants, no ceremonial food trays. "Try the Raltec fries," Ethan said, pointing to the menu. Skira blinked. "You expect me to eat from paper?" she asked, puzzled. He laughed. "It's not paper. It's biodegradable polymer. Trust me, it's good." She didn't understand his jokes, but she nodded, pretending to. They ordered, talked a little. Mostly about Earth and Xenthara. He was calm, kind, and never once tried to impress her. That made her more uneasy than any blaster. The food arrived hot, oily, and glowing slightly. Skira poked at the strange meal, sniffed it, then took a bite. Her eyes widened. "It tastes wild," she whispered. Ethan grinned. "Told you you'd like it." For a moment, things felt easy. Then the human server returned and placed a small square device on the table. "Totals 42 credits." The server said, then walked away. Ethan reached for his side pouch, but then looked up. "So, you want to split the bill?" he asked casually. Skira froze. Her fork halfway to her mouth split. She repeated, her voice low. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, I mean, we both ate, right?" Skira's eyes narrowed, her fingers tightening on the edge of the table. "In my culture," she said slowly, "a male provides food to prove his strength. To show honor." Ethan leaned back, blinking in surprise. "Wait, you think this was a test of dominance or something?" he asked, confused. "Was it not?" She replied, her voice cold. "Is that why you invited me here?" Ethan shook his head. "No, I just thought we'd get to know each other, talk over some food, like friends. Or more, if things went well." Skira stood up suddenly, her chair screeching against the floor. "You insult me, human," she said, her voice sharp. "I am not a soldier begging for scraps. I am Xira of the Flameclaw caste, people in the diner." Turned to look, Ethan raised his hands, trying to calm her. "I didn't mean to offend you." "Really?" he said, standing as well. Humans do things differently. We believe in sharing, not control." Skira stared at him, her pride burning like fire, but underneath that fire, a strange feeling began to grow. Confusion, curiosity, maybe even something softer. Without another word, she turned and walked out. Leaving the food half-eaten, Ethan watched her go, then sighed, sitting back down slowly, outside, under the cold starlight. Skira stood alone. She looked down at her. Hands, still trembling, split the bill. She muttered to herself what kind of male invited a female to eat, and then asked her to pay. What kind of weak, dishonorable custom was this? But then again, he didn't seem weak. He hadn't begged, hadn't tried to prove anything. He was calm, firm, honest, too honest. She looked back through the diner window. Ethan sat alone, eating quietly. As if nothing had happened, she didn't understand him, and that scared her more than any weapon ever had. Maybe she should forget him. But her feet refused to move, and her heart, for the first time in years, felt uncertain. Jira didn't return to her quarters that night. Instead, she walked alone through the quiet paths of Outpost 17, her boots leaving soft prints in the moonlit dust. The wind was gentle, but her mind was storming. She couldn't stop hearing his words. So, you want to split the bill? No male had ever asked her to pay, not even during training meals on Xenthara. To split the cost was like splitting honor. It meant both had equal ground, and that made no sense to her upbringing, not when she had been taught since childhood that males offered and females chose. She stopped near the landing bay, where old machinery rested like sleeping beasts. Far away, she spotted movement. It was Himathon, top of a tall ladder, fixing a broken signal dish. He was alone. No assistant, no backup, just a dim headlamp and his tools. Gira narrowed her eyes and crossed her arms. What was he trying to prove now? Was he trying to earn back his lost honor? Or was he really just that ... simple? Suddenly, a spark flew from the panel. The ladder jolted, and Ethan nearly fell. Gira moved before she even realized it. Her body reacted faster than her pride. She reached the base of the ladder and steadied it with both hands. Ethan looked down, surprised, his breath a little shaken. "You again?" he said with a faint smile. "Didn't expect you to follow me?" "I didn't," she said quickly. "I just happened to pass by, right?" he said, chuckling as he climbed down slowly. When he reached the ground, he didn't say anything for a moment, just wiped the sweat from his brow and checked the small injury on his wrist. Gira glanced at his tool belt. It was scratched, old, but clean and cared for. Everything about him confused her. No armor, no rank, no titles. Yet, he did things with his own hands. Most males she knew used others to do their work. But not him. "Yukudav," she muttered, still holding the ladder. He shrugged. "Yeah, but if the signal's not fixed, cargo ships might crash trying to land. I'd rather not let that happen." Sira didn't know what to say to that. On her world, risks were taken for glory, not for strangers in metal ships. Ethan stepped back, stretching his shoulders. "I didn't mean to insult you back at the diner," he said gently. "I really didn't know about your customs." Shira looked at him, her pride still wounded, but her voice softer. "In my culture, when a male offers food, he's offering more than a meal." Ethan nodded. "And in mine, when someone offers to split the bill, it means they see you as equal." She blinked. Equal. That word hit harder than she expected. "I don't need you to provide for me," she said, her voice steady. Ethan smiled again. "I never thought you did." They stood in silence for a few seconds. Above them, a small shuttle passed by with a deep rumble. Yara turned to leave, but stopped. "Tomorrow," she said, not looking back. "If I bring food, would you share it with me?" Ethan tilted his head, surprised, then nodded slowly. "I'd like that," he said. Without another word, Jira walked into the shadows, her steps lighter than before. She still didn't understand humans. But something about Ethan made her want to learn, even if it meant unlearning everything she once believed. The next day began with the sound of soft thunder in the distance, not from the sky, but from old mining drills starting up again. Jira stood near the edge of the outpost, holding a wrapped bundle in her hands. Inside was a traditional Xenthari root bread, soaked in firefruit oil and wrapped in silver leaves, something only made for rare bonds or respected guests. Her hands trembled slightly, but not from fear, from doubt. Was she really going to offer food to a male? On her world, that would make her look desperate, even low caste. But this was not her world. And Ethan was not like any male she had known. She found him crouched near a broken loader bot. his hands covered in black grease, humming a quiet tune. That made no sense to her ears. She stood still for a moment, watching him. How could someone so calm carry no sense of dominance, yet still command her attention so strongly? He looked up and smiled when he saw her. "Didn't expect to see you so early," he said, wiping his hands with a rag. "I brought food," she said simply, holding it out like an offering. He took it carefully, as if it were something sacred. "Thanks," he said, and that was it. No questions, no jokes, no pride. They sat on an old bench near the garden dome. Xeno watched him take the first bite, his face lighting up. "This is incredible," he said, his eyes wide. She felt warmth rise in her chest. Unfamiliar, but not unpleasant, she took a piece for herself, and they ate in silence for a while. A group of Xenthari workers passed by, one of them raising a brow at the sight. Xeno met his gaze with quiet defiance. Let them stare, she thought. She wasn't ashamed of sitting beside a human anymore. Ethan leaned back and looked up at the soft red sky above the dome. "Back on Earth, we don't really do this kind of thing often," he said. "Share food." She asked. "Not like this," he replied, not with meaning, not with silence. She nodded slowly, understanding more than she thought she would. "For us, food is part of the bond," she said. "You give it to someone you honor. Or someone you want to protect." Ethan turned to her. "Is that what this is?" Xeno didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at his hands, again dirty, strong and real. "I don't know yet," she said at last. "But I want to understand why you don't feel the need to show power." He laughed softly. "Maybe because I don't need to." Her head tilted slightly. Confused, he smiled. "You don't need to prove your strength if you already know who you are." Those words settled in her like a stone in deep water. The warning bell rang from the outpost tower. A supply freighter was arriving, late and damaged. Ethan stood quickly, grabbing his tools. "Duty calls," he said, then hesitated. "Come with me." Xeno stood without hesitation. "Yes," she said. They walked side by side to the docking bay, and for the first time, she didn't walk ahead or behind. She walked with him, equal steps, no need to prove anything, just us. Share the path. The freighter docked rough and crooked, its hull scorched and its left wing cracked. Sparks rained from its undercarriage as it screeched to a stop. Xeno instinctively reached for the hilt that wasn't there. This world didn't allow open weapons, but Ethan stayed calm, already climbing the ramp to offer help. Inside, crates had toppled over, spilling water packs and strange earth tools across the floor. The pilot, a nervous insectoid from the Pollock race, kept apologizing in rapid clicks and broken common. "It's fine," Ethan said gently. "No one's hurt." Xeno stood behind him, arms crossed, silently watching as he lifted boxes back into place without being asked. She didn't know why that impressed her more than a fight ever had. Small emergency fire had broken out near the cooling systems. Ethan grabbed a handheld extinguisher and jumped into the smoke without hesitation. Xeno hesitated for only a second, then followed, not to protect him, but to stand beside him when the smoke cleared. Ethan's face was streaked with soot, and he coughed but laughed. Xeno handed him a wet cloth, her expression unreadable. "You didn't even think twice," she said quietly. "Neither did you," he replied, meeting her eyes. Something shifted between them in that moment, unspoken, but alive. Later that evening, they sat near the edge of the supply bay, feet dangling over the loading track. The stars above seemed closer here, almost soft. Ethan handed her a sealed container, still warm. "I made something for you," he said. Xeno opened the lid and stared down at a clumsy attempt at a Xenthari root stew. The colors were wrong, and the scent was strange, but it was made with care. "You cooked?" she asked, half shocked, half amused. "I tried," he said. No promises on the taste. She took a bite, and her eyes watered instantly. "It's spicy," she gasped. Ethan looked horrified. "Wait, bad spicy? Or good spicy?" Skira coughed, then laughed a deep, rich sound that surprised even her. "Brave spicy," she said, and took another bite. The silence that followed was warm, not awkward. Ethan looked at her, more serious now. Back at the diner, he said, slowly, "I really didn't know what it meant to you." "I know," she said. "And I didn't know what it meant to you either." They sat like that, two beings from different worlds, trying to learn each other one bite at a time. Skira glanced at him and said, "When I first saw you, I thought you were soft." Ethan smirked. "And now?" "I still think you're soft," she said. "But soft doesn't mean weak." He smiled at that, not offended at all. A breeze passed, gentle and cool. Jira reached into her satchel and pulled out a single silver-leaf tokena, symbol of mutual respect in her culture. She placed it on the bench between them. "I don't offer this lightly," she said, not looking at him. Ethan picked it up carefully, holding it like it might break. "Then I won't take it lightly," he replied, somewhere deep inside. She felt her walls crack just a little more, not from weakness, but from understanding. And that, she realized, was the strongest feeling of all. The market district of Outpost 17 was loud, full of flashing lights, sizzling street food, and the chatter of many languages mixing like smoke in the air. Skira walked beside Ethan, her long coat brushing against his. Her head high, but her senses sharp. She wasn't used to crowds without guards, and every sound made her hand twitch toward the blade she no longer carried. Ethan moved casually, greeting merchants with nods and smiles, stopping to explain things she'd never seen before. He didn't act like someone in charge, yet somehow everyone respected him. A vendor waved them over, offering dried skewers of some meat Ethan couldn't name. Gira paid with a small trade token before he could stop her, handing him one of the sticks. "No argument this time?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Don't get used to it," she replied, biting into hers. "I just owed you a meal." He smiled. "We're keeping score now?" "No," she said. "We're keeping balance." The moment should have ended in laughter. But it didn't. A tall, scaled trader stepped into their path, his eyes cold and narrow. "Zenthari, female," he said. "Your family sent word they want you returned." Jira stiffened, her jaw tightening. "I am not returning," she said flatly. The trader sneered. "Then at least return the honor tokens you've shamed." Ethan stepped forward. "Is there a problem?" The trader's eyes slid toward him like poison. "Stay out of this, soft skin. It's not your concern." Ethan didn't move. "She's with me," he said, his voice calm but firm. A crowd had started to form, whispers passing from one to another. Yera's heart pounded, not in fear, but in rage. This was her past coming to grab her by the throat in front of the one person who made her feel free. The trader raised a hand and made a motion. Two other figures appeared, armored and silent. Jira glanced at Ethan, then back at the approaching threat. "I won't fight here," she said. "Not in this crowd." Ethan stepped closer to her, his shoulder brushing hers. "You don't have to," he whispered. Then he turned to the trader and raised his voice so all could hear. "This female has done nothing wrong," he said. "She owes no one her presence, no one her loyalty." The crowd quieted, watching, listening. Ethan continued, "If anyone thinks she is less because she chose her own path, then maybe the problem isn't her, but the world she left behind." The trader looked shaken, not by force, but by the stares of those around him. Jera felt heat rise in her throat, but it wasn't anger anymore. It was something else, something strong and unshakable. Ethan's words had carried weight, not because of power, but because of truth. The trader backed away, his expression unreadable, and his guards followed. Disappearing into the crowd, Gira exhaled slowly. Then, looked at Ethan. "You didn't fight," she said quietly. "You didn't need someone to fight for you," he replied. "Just someone to stand beside you." For a long moment, they just looked at each other. No words, no fear, only understanding. And in that crowded marketplace, Gira smiled, not as a warrior, not as a runaway, but as herself, free. The message came at dawn, a red pulse blinking on the console inside Gira's shared quarters. She opened it carefully, expecting threats or orders from home, but what she saw made her pause. 'Twas a single phrase, spoken in formal tone by her clan elder. "You are dishonored, Yora of Flameclaw. Your caste has removed your name from the record." The air turned heavy. Even though the room was still and silent, she stood there, unmoving. No rank, no bloodline, no right to speak. In the great halls of Zenthara, she had been erased. Ethan entered the room moments later. Wiping oil from his fingers, he saw the screen, saw her face, and said nothing at first. Instead, he walked over and sat beside her. "I guess they finally responded," he said gently. She didn't answer, not with words, only a slow nod, stiff and quiet. "I know what it's like," he said after a while. "To lose something that tells you who you are." She turned to look at him, her eyes darker than usual. "Then you know it feels like your chest is full of broken metal." He nodded. "When I left Earth, I lost my post, my city, even my family's approval." "Why?" she asked. "Because I chose to help aliens," he said, a sad smile on his lips. "And they thought I was betraying humanity." Zira blinked. "You were shamed for helping others," he shrugged. "Sometimes doing what's right looks wrong." To the people stuck in the past, she didn't say anything after that, just stood and walked to the window. The outpost was quiet. The horizon painted gold with the rising sun. She pressed her forehead to the glass and whispered, "I don't belong anywhere now." Ethan walked over and leaned beside her. "That's not true," he said. "You belong where you're understood." "Then I belong only here," she said, voice almost broken. "And only with you." They stood in silence. No guards, no honor tokens, no family names. Just two people who had nothing to offer but the truth. Ethan placed his hand over hers. It wasn't a promise or a romantic move. It was a quiet act of staying. Later that day, others in the outpost began to notice. Some looked at her with pity, some with judgment, but a few, a very few, looked with respect. She no longer walked with her back straight from pride. Now she walked steady from purpose. No caste, no title, but something deeper: choice. By evening, she removed the last symbol of her warrior caste from her belt. She placed it on a stone outside the market, a public farewell. People gathered, whispering, wondering, but she didn't care. Ethan stood nearby. Not touching, not speaking, just watching. She didn't need him to explain or rescue her anymore. She just needed him to be there. And he was, like always, like someone who understood what it meant to lose the world you came from and choose the one you were building together. The air was cooler than usual that morning. Dust floated in golden light, and a quiet hum echoed through the outpost plaza. People gathered, not for a fight, not for a trial, but for something new. Tables had been placed in a long circle, filled with dishes from many worlds' earth bread, besides Anthari spice roots, Clavian nectar next to human stew pots. It wasn't a feast of ceremony. It was something else. Something no one had seen before. At the center stood Gira, dressed not in armor, not in cast colors, but in simple, woven cloth. Her hair was unbound, her face calm, and in her hand was a silver leaf token, no longer a badge of old honor, but a symbol of chosen respect. Ethan stood beside her, holding nothing. Wearing the same dusty jacket he always did, they didn't stand above anyone. didn't demand attention, and yet every eye was on them. Zira took a step forward and cleared her throat. She looked around, her voice strong without needing to shout. In my old world, a male who did not provide food was weak. The crowd murmured softly. But here, she continued, I learned that sharing food is not weakness, it is trust. She turned to Ethan, who gave her the smallest nod. I was taught to measure strength by how much power someone could hold over others. She paused, but true strength is how much someone lifts others without asking for reward. She raised the silver leaf token high, then placed it in the center of the table. It's a silent offering to no one and everyone. Then she took a piece of human bread and a slice of Zenthari fruit and placed them on the same plate, a shared meal without cost, without caste, without pride. One by one, others followed. A Glavian boy brought his mother sweet cakes and sat beside a Terran miner. An old merchant shared steam-cooked moss with a soldier from another moon. There were no leaders, no servers, no rules, only people learning what it meant to sit side by side. Ethan poured water into 2 simple cups and handed one to Gyra. She took it with a small smile, her fingers brushing his for only a second longer than needed. Is this a human wedding ritual? She teased. Ethan laughed. Only if we argue about who washes the dishes after. She laughed too, a sound that no longer surprised her as the sun rose higher. The outpost looked less like a station and more like a beginning. People ate together, spoke softly, shared stories without shame. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And that was enough. Zira sat back beside Ethan, her hands resting in her lap. She no longer missed her caste, her status, or the life she had been trained for, because this place, these people, this moment was hers by choice, not birth. She looked at Ethan and said quietly, I used to think real males always provided food. He glanced at her with a smirk. And now? Now I know, she said. Real strength is knowing when to give and when to share. They clinked their cups together. No toast, no ceremony. Just a quiet sound in the middle of a very loud change, and somewhere deep inside, something old faded away, and something new, something better, took its place.